Okay, well, thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Martin Lalonde, and I'm an Education Technology Specialist at It's Learning. The introduction of the Apprenticeship Levy seems to have opened up a lot of opportunities for providers, and today we've got three industry experts who are going to provide some insight into how the current delivery models are going to be enhanced. So you're going to hear from an education consultant, Joe Wilson. We've also got Grant Swart from Just IT, we're an apprenticeship provider in London. Our final speaker is Bob Harrison. So the apprenticeship levies does seem to be a very hot topic at the moment. We've had a very huge amount of interest in this webinar, so thank you for joining us. If you've got any questions, please ask them on the right-hand side, and they can be entered into the questions section just by going in there and adding your questions. I'm going to introduce Joe Wilson now. Joe is the former Chief Executive of the College Development Network, and he's currently an independent education consultant working on a range of assignments for awarding bodies, universities, private companies and public agencies across the UK and internationally. In this area, he's currently providing advice to JISC on the embedding of digital practices and digital literacy in the design, development and delivery of the new apprenticeship frameworks in England. He is currently one of the UK ambassadors for the Association of Learning Technology, a Microsoft Innovative Educator, board member of the YouthLink Scotland, a trustee of the Clyde Foundation and a board member of Glasgow Kelvin College. He is also a non-executive director and board member of the SCQF Partnership, the Scottish Adult Learning Partnership, and has served on a number of college boards of management across Scotland. His interests lie in bridging the academic vocational divide, skill sets and cultural changes needed to embrace digital change in learning, quality and standards in vocational education and digital literacy. He was one of the founding members of the UK E-Assessment Association and has pioneered the adoption of e-portfolios and latterly open badges in education. Joe is an active blogger and tweeter, and he can be followed on his blog at www.joewilsons.net or on Twitter at Joe Carr, C-A-R, on Twitter. So Joe is going to talk through the challenges of the new apprenticeship levy and the opportunities it opens up for providers in improving the quality of apprenticeship delivery.
Hello everybody. What a nice introduction, quite a long introduction, but quite a nice introduction, and many thanks, Martin. What I'm proposing to do today isn't really to talk about all of the nitty-gritty of the apprenticeship levy, but really to talk about the game changers that all of this involves. The new Institute of Apprenticeships, and you'll see in brackets and technical education, which I'll pick up at the end of my presentation, really heralds a sea change in the whole area of apprenticeship delivery and design. The training levy, which will raise £2.5 billion pounds in England, £3 billion pounds across the UK, really gives us, and I've got to mention the Brexit thing as well, really gives us a superb opportunity to radically change, the system, and the expectation from the politicians and the system is that there will be radical change in all of this. One of the first aspects of the radical change is really that employers will really now be contracting directly with training providers, and that is a sea change. AELP and lots of other training organisations have all been flagging up that actually at the moment training providers play a critical role in actually recruiting both apprentices and engaging with employers. But the new system is that employers will be in the driving seat, and they will both take on apprentices and then contract directly with training providers. What the government expects is of the around 650 training providers that exist in England, that number will probably stay about the same, but that actually as employers come on board, there'll be displacement. Some employers will now choose to become training providers too, so there's going to be a big change in the marketplace. There's also a big change in the nature of the programs. The Trailblazers, which from here on in I believe will be called Pathfinders, and again I'll pick that up later in my presentation, but the new Trailblazer apprenticeship standards are now about programs that last between 1 and 4 years. Between 1 and 4 years. So that's different to what's been in place before. It's also about delivering 20% of the training off the job. Now, off the job, if you read through the paperwork, means not as a normal part of the workplace, but it means that it could be delivered, or parts of this could be delivered online. And the other big change is really that qualifications, as we know it in this space, become much less significant. The assessment is all about the endpoint assessment. It's about doing a course that lasts for a year, perhaps even 4 years, and then going to an assessment centre and doing a very rigorous endpoint assessment. So we're moving back towards that bit of an apprentice at the end of their apprenticeship, demonstrating all of the competencies and skills that they've picked up over a period of time, and moving away from qualifications. And it also means the most expensive part, or one of the most expensive parts of the whole new system, will be the endpoint assessment, because if you end load all of the assessments and you've got to take apprentices away from the workplace to do this endpoint assessment, and it's got to assess across the apprenticeship, that will take a period of time and will be quite an expensive exercise. In terms of the landscape changing further, there's a register of training providers, which I saw the delegate list, and I know there's a lot of training providers that I'm speaking to. It was opened and it's closed again, but it's opening again in September 2016. And my understanding too around the register of training providers is that when the register opens, the Institute for Apprenticeships will be looking for training providers that have thought about online delivery. And as well as having a register of training providers, to keep the training and the endpoint assessment separate, there will also be a register of endpoint assessment bodies as well. And again, back to that Brexit thing, there were meant to be other papers and other information published by this point. They were scheduled to be published by the end of June, but all indications are that there's been slight slippage, but we're still on target for the training levy to be introduced for the register of training providers to open in September, and for things really to steam ahead, unless of course again there's another general election or anything called. It does look as though the die is cast on this. I'm speaking from Scotland, and at the moment in Scotland there's still a deafening silence around what they're going to do, both with the money from the training levy and how it will be disbursed back into the system. So I would say in England, in terms of the road ahead, in terms of the register of training providers and so forth, the road ahead is actually clearer in England than it is in Scotland, and I'm guessing it will be the same case in Wales and Northern Ireland. So what does all of this big change mean? Well, it means it's really time to rethink what you can offer into this space. The first thing, as I've highlighted, is that the new system is not so qualifications driven. So it's not small chunks of learning with a certificate. It also needs to manage this process. Needs more than perhaps a paper-based or an e-portfolio. You need to look beyond that. You need to jump ahead of that. What candidates and employers now need is they need greater confidence that their training provider is supporting learners along the learning journey, and preparing candidates for success in the endpoint assessment. Now that means that any system that you have has to be good at both supplying learning materials and assessments, but also tracking learners through, so that both a candidate and an employer is confident that when they invest in the endpoint assessment, that the candidate will be successful. Because if the candidate was unsuccessful, then the employer would then have to pay another large lump of money to resit effectively the endpoint assessment. So employers will be looking for training suppliers who have systems that meet these needs. We're now looking beyond the traditional MOOC or Moodle or virtual learning environment, and looking beyond an e-portfolio system to something that kind of does both. And as I highlighted, the indications are that if you want to stay in this apprenticeship space, you'll need to demonstrate that you're ready for online delivery, and I put in brackets also that you're ready to support the development of digital literacy. And again, if you look at all of the paperwork around the Trailblazers and the Institute of Apprenticeships and the new apprenticeship guidelines, then they highlight both that numeracy and literacy and that GCSE element will be continued to be funded and is still important, but that everybody's being asked to highlight where the development of digital literacy is happening in the learning experience and in the delivery. So again, if you had the right system, you could model the development of digital literacy as you deliver your vocational qualifications. And that really comes to the next bit. You'll hear later, following the webinar, Bob talking about what's already happened or happening in a patchy way across the further education landscape, that for almost the last 4 years, through something called FELTAG, the FELTAG initiative, colleges have been exploring different ways to blend learning. And that blended learning of having learning happening in the classroom, online, but all of that around learners' expectations. That learning now needs to be just in time, at their desk, at home, on the phone or the mobile devices, their own devices that they have, and support to be available 24/7. Now, when support's available 24/7 doesn't mean you'll be teaching round the clock, but it means that learners can engage, do formative exercises, look at learning materials, collaborate perhaps with other learners at times that suit them. And there are challenges in all of this. Some of the challenges around this are around things like the access to the internet, access to Wi-Fi, whether or not workplaces allow learners to use their mobile phone or access a computer in the workplace. But all of the indications are that everybody is working really hard to get all of this opened up, so that learners can learn 24/7, both in the workplace and at home. And it's also about blending learning materials. So it's about being able to access a broad range of learning materials and formative assessments, really so that employers and learners can track their own progress. They can move at their own speed through the learning materials with support. In terms of learning materials, it's about working in a more intelligent way, both with employers, because lots of employers actually have very, very good support materials, but they've never been sure where to put them, where to work with a training provider to help a training provider. And again, with the right platform, you can blend both your own learning materials with the employer's learning materials, and you can also access learning materials from organisations like JISC, who are doing an enormous amount to support both staff development and the development of a different culture towards learning. And there's also organisations like the Heart of Worcestershire College, and again, I don't know if you're familiar with, but the Heart of Worcestershire College is really has a collaborative sharing approach to learning. It's a content consortium, so for a small access fee, you can get access to a lot of learning content. And there's also a whole raft from City Guilds and a whole range of other providers, Pearson, etc. There's a whole range of other commercial content that you can blend in around within your VLE. And that's the journey that we're on. It's about that bit of supporting effective remote delivery and also encouraging a high degree of collaboration between learners. If you're a training provider and you're used to dealing with not large groups of learners in the one place, but large groups of learners distributed across the country, then you now need a platform really that will allow collaboration between these learners, so they can do project work and they can share learning materials among themselves too. So what do you need to think about? If you're going to jump ahead, what I think you need to think about is something that's cloud-based. You need a tool that allows you to focus on your delivery and not worry about a server in a cupboard somewhere overheating and all these other bits and pieces. You need a system that can work across multiple devices. Bring your own device is the thing. I'm sitting here with my mobile phone and all the other bits and pieces. My kids, you might hear them in the background, or down the stairs on their iPads and on their computers and all these kind of things all the time. They expect learning to arrive there and be accessible on whatever device that they have. In terms of these new qualifications in this landscape, what we need to make it work are better controls, both around the management of learning materials, but you also need more effective analytics and reporting. And it's all about that confidence, not just to help learners who might be at danger of dropping out, but mainly without qualifications and other baby steps in all of this. It's really about ensuring that the learners are ready and prepared for the endpoint assessment. And to pull all of this together, what you need is that kind of attractive interface with a range of tools that allows both learners to collaborate and then also in terms of your own quality internal verification. You need to think cleverly about how your tutors too, who will be distributed, how they work on the same platform to moderate and verify the learner's work. And I started talking at the start of my presentation really about how the Institute for Apprenticeships was going to change further. And on last Friday, the government further published the post-16 skills plan and also the Sainsbury's report. And really what they're saying there is that the reforms that have already happened are already happening in the apprenticeship space are also going to be mirrored around everything that's happening in the college and the post-16 learning space. The Institute for Apprenticeships will become the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, and will really be in the driving seat of all of these changes. And I've put a link up there where you can go and you can see some of the changes that are coming through the post-16 skills plan. Mainly that there are now there will be 15 streams, and and also that expectation that digital literacy sits alongside English and maths. So it's all big change. It's a good time to rethink both how you use blended learning, how you use different platforms, and how you deliver in different ways to this audience. I don't want to say that the cost saving one. I don't think this is. I think this is about making learning more effective. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we all have, and I see myself as a college person who have worked with training providers, I think the biggest challenge that we all have will actually be around getting all of our staff into that new place. And in terms of getting all of our staff into that new place, and again in that open and collaborative way, and you'll get all of these links. There's lots of support out there from JISC around created blending learning content if you want to do it yourself. If you're not sure how to work in this kind of world, then the UFI, the University for Industry and Future Learn, has a free program around blended learning essentials, which you could be using with your staff. It's a MOOC, a massive open online course. ALT, the Association for Learning Technology, and I think it was said in my introduction, I'm the UK ambassador, so forgive the plug, but they have specialist courses for learning technologists to help them do all of that. And there are also other specialist resources around how to create e-textbooks, again from JISC. So what I hope I've done there is whetted the appetite and let you see what the big changes are, how they're going to impact you, and where there's support available for you. And I'm now going to switch back to Martin.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you. We've got a few questions actually, if you wouldn't mind answering a few of these.
Yes, of course.
While we've got you, Joe. So one of those is, do providers need to have independent endpoint assessment provision? And is there a list of endpoint assessors? And what about the written question assessment part of it?
Okay, but excuse me. I'll take the questions one at a time. So the first question was about the endpoint assessment and who does that.
Yeah.
And really the rule is that you could be registered both as a training provider and as an endpoint assessment organization, but it's pretty clear that you cannot be the endpoint assessment organization for your own candidates.
Yeah.
So you could, if you wanted to really play in this field in your specific area, you could be a registered training provider, and you could be an endpoint assessment provider. But all of this is about good governance and diligence. So you wouldn't be able to be both the training provider for your trainees and then be the endpoint assessment organisation for these trainees. So does that answer the first question?
It does, yeah. And the second bit was, what about the written sort of question assessment part of it?
Okay. So again, if you're thinking about jumping ahead, I'd be thinking about online assessment at every turn. I would be thinking in terms of the course delivery stuff. I'd be thinking about having within my learning materials, chunked learning and lots of useful formative assessments and project work within the learning that I was delivering online. And certainly when it comes to the endpoint assessment, if you're looking at that part, then I would be thinking about how I use a range of different question type items within an online assessment system for that. Really, so I can manage it across multiple centres, but also so that I'm quite clear that I'm delivering to the same standard across multiple geographic centres.
Thanks, Joe. There's a follow-on question from that. So, will the cost of the endpoint assessment be validated and controlled? Some figures being quoted seem extortionate.
Yeah, I think that that's the challenge in all of this change. I think again, remember, it will be a marketplace. So there will be a range of providers providing endpoint assessment, and I think at the moment the government's expectation is that that marketplace mechanism will drive down the price. What I would say is I think there's still challenges around this, because if you the model just now around the apprenticeship is that it's not sampling. You've got to follow the Trailblazers assessment strategy, and I haven't quite seen this, but there is a danger that a Trailblazers assessment strategy, say in construction, might be build an arch. I don't think anything will be as extreme as that, but building an arch takes a lot of time. And if that's the assessment strategy, then it will be very, very expensive. So I think there'll still be some movement around that, but certainly the big costs that I've picked up from the Trailblazers isn't in the delivery; it's in the assessment. And of course, all of the fee for a new apprenticeship that can be pulled down is a capped amount of money. And it is likely that the endpoint assessment will run into thousands of pounds, perhaps £2,000 or £3,000 I've seen quoted as the cost of the endpoint assessment.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. One more question before we move on to Joe. So it's good to hear that digital literacy is being taken more seriously. However, it's not really referenced in the Sainsbury's reports.
Well, I think you'll find if folk have a look at the government response to it, what the government response actually says is that digital literacy should underpin all of the new 16 strands. And again, if you look at all of the stuff around the Trailblazers and the advice from the new apprenticeship body, is that digital literacy is going to feature everywhere. And what I would say it's worth having a look at, what's happened in Wales. In Wales, they've rejigged their essential skills framework. They've taken IT out. Taking IT out might sound a bit controversial, but actually what they've done is they've taken IT out and put a broader set of skills in digital literacy. So it's really IT plus a whole lot of softer skill, a whole lot of other technical skills. And I think that's the sort of model that will be adopted in England, and I think it will also be the model that will eventually be adopted in Scotland too.
Thank you, Joe. We're on to our second speaker today, and he's from an IT apprenticeship company in London called Just IT. Just IT have training programs, and they've launched the careers of 4,500 IT professionals. Their position as a leading IT training provider allows them to provide bespoke training courses for all sizes of businesses. Every year, Just IT place hundreds of motivated young people into London companies for hands-on experience of the modern IT industry, and 80% of their apprentices move on to full-time position with their employers. So Just IT have been using an online learning platform to offer blended learning called It's Learning, and that's been used as a centralised space for blended learning to enhance the learning experience of their apprentices. Classroom time has been reduced so that apprentices can stay with their employers for longer periods. Pre-learning, or flip learning as it's also known, takes place within It's Learning, engaging learners outside of the classroom. Grant is the Curriculum and IT Services Manager at Just IT, and he will explain how Just IT are using online learning to get themselves ready for the forthcoming apprenticeship levy. So, if you want to share your screen.
Yeah, screen is all there. Can everybody?
I can see that. Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, should I take over from now, Martin?
Please.
Brilliant. Well, hello everybody. And thank you, Joe, for your insight. A lot of what you said made a lot of sense to me as well. It's what we're all trying to kind of keep up with all the developments, and there's lots of things and lots of changes happening right now in this space in terms of standards and it's just a case of lots of things in the pipeline for various organisations, government, biz, everybody, and even the training providers ourselves are sort of wanting to sell these standards, but yet we're for someone like me in my position, I'm sort of challenged because I have to come up with slick delivery models for things that haven't actually been signed off at a government level yet in some cases, and I have a team of sales staff who are desperately trying to sell, well, not desperately, but they're keen to sell standards, because the standards are a great thing. There's no doubt about that, and I think the whole thinking behind it is very much employer driven, and so that sort of leads into what we wanted to build at Just IT in terms of an employer driven delivery model, really. I'm not saying that the previous one isn't, but this one is definitely more of the emphasis, I suppose. And the way we saw it in terms of what we were looking for from the system was something that the employer can be a real part of, and they can be a part of not only from the delivery side of it, but also the pre-delivery, so they can get a feel for what it is we're doing, how we're doing it. The employer is much more integrated with the standards delivery of apprenticeships, and I think that's part of our job and our responsibility as a training provider, is to make sure that they are very much aware of their contribution to it. So you possibly all know that one of the key, it's kind of almost semantics, but one of the key words they use is they have mentors in the business. And I'm just going to show you something. The mentor itself is actually got to be a designated person in the employer who's going to be working with that apprentice and helping that apprentice through the journey. One of the things that we were, yeah, you like the Yoda bit? Yeah. One of the things that we were wanting to really emphasize is when we have discussions with customers, is that, you know, their role is a critical role in the business to make sure that apprentice can be nurtured and developed and made sure that they can, as Joe was describing earlier, meet the necessary competency and standard to then be able to complete the endpoint assessment. So the journey to get there, in a sense. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on the mentoring role and in a supportive way to the employer. And we're able to do that quite easily and achieve that quite easily through the platform. That's just one little thing. Just going back a couple of steps, one of the things that Martin asked me to sort of discuss today with you all was sort of what was our thinking behind the platform we ultimately have chosen to do, and it's a very good question because it's very fundamental to where we were before. Some of you, I'm sure, may have heard of Moodle. That was our previous platform, and it was fair to say that platform it wasn't fit for purpose, to be fair, for our needs. I actually have only been in the space for a fairly short period of time in terms of the apprenticeship space. I was previously a software developer, and I came to Just IT. I did have a training background, but not so much in the apprenticeship background. When I came here, I obviously inherited the It's Learning platform, and it didn't take me long. It really only took me about an hour of assessment and realised, hey, this is pretty good, to be fair. And I can see why we went with the system, and I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts about why I think it's so good. The challenge which Joe pointed out earlier was that you really want a platform that's going to work. It's not just for the learner, it's for the employer, it's for the staff. You know, staff always often have to are impacted by any changes, so you want a system that's going to work for them in a really simple way. And I have to say, this system is simple once you get the first 20% under your belt, really, with it. and there's probably on the system now. In fact, Martin, I was speaking with, I had a meeting with two colleagues yesterday, our account manager and the trainer who looks after us at It's Learning. And you know, like any platform, you can have lots of bells and whistles, but actually, like Excel, you can have, you know, most people only use 10% of what its power is. This is a very powerful platform. There's no doubt about that. I'm probably only using 20% of it, if 20. But the point is, I'm using the best 20% for our needs. So at the moment, I'm very happy, and it was quite reassuring yesterday, speaking to your colleagues, to know that what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do, we're definitely heading in the right direction, and we're using the tools to our liking, really. And I'm going to show you some of those tools in a minute. What's so good about this is that it's a very flexible tool, very easy to work with, in my opinion. And I've actually been working with it with several groups for the last few months. And I remember one particular telling group. I said to the apprentices, I said, I'm going to introduce you to our VLE, and they said to me, it's not Moodle, sir. And I said, no, it's not Moodle, and they obviously have had different experiences in the past from different sources. But when I showed them this, and I said, look, this is what you're going to be using, and we had an exercise on here for them to do, and they got a feel for the platform, and they just instantly said, this is easy, you know. And let's face it, we all live busy lives, and we all have digital coming out of our ears, really. You know, the last thing we need is something that's complicated, and so one of the things that I think about when I'm developing this platform for all the courses in the company that we have is thinking about obviously the best experience we can give the learners, as I said earlier, the employers, and importantly my staff, because I want my staff to be able to pick this up and run with it pretty quickly. And I can confidently tell you that, yeah, with a little bit of good planning, a little bit of consideration and thought, and they once they get it, they work with it very easy. And funnily enough, yesterday I had the meeting I had with the technical person at It's Learning has given me insight on it. Another tool now that I'm become aware of, and that's going to make the job of integrating with the Office suite even easier for us. So I'm looking forward to being able to use that. So all good, really, in terms of that. In terms of the price, I think it's a very cost-effective platform. It's in the cloud, like Joe was saying. You want something in the cloud. It's ridiculous to these days, and if you're wanting to be a focus on your delivery as opposed to managing the platform, I think for the price, it represents very good value for money for us anyway. To do what we're doing, we're getting 365, 24/7. Response with this. I love the fact that I can say to my learners, by the way, whatever I'm talking to you about today, whatever I'm doing to you about today, it's all here on your VLE when you just log in tonight and you can review your notes. Some of the powerful things that I've enjoyed working with us in the last 6 months is the fact that I'm spending more time improving the delivery of what we do, and because we're able to add to the base of content that we have already here, and we're getting collaboration with the learners that are on the courses, so that they are adding to this as well. So we're building a very rich supply of good content on it, and my focus is not on trying to find the content. It's actually been able to enhance it, which is a really good thing. Very reliable. I've only had one little moment which I wondered about. It was quite early on with the system. I'm always a bit wary as a previous life as a software developer about systems, but I've done a fair bit of research on It's Learning, and it's a worldwide piece of software. We haven't had a problem actually. We after that one little blip, it's been absolutely fine. And that blip was still, I wouldn't say it was their fault. We're not sure what it was really. Might have been a DNS issue. The challenges I would say for people thinking about this system, I think Joe sort of alluded to it in his talking. It's an opportunity, to be fair. you have to really look at a one-stop shop. And I think if you're going to be successful in this new era of standards apprenticeships, you want to keep it all simple, you want to keep it all tidy, you want to keep it visible for lots of different audiences, and that's definitely my goal in terms of how we develop the different standards on the system, and we're definitely able to achieve it. And that's really great. I'm having a meeting tomorrow with our business coach, who's going to be playing a very important role in the delivery of the actual apprenticeship, which is the new word for assessor as such. And I wanted to make sure that the way that they were going to do things was going to make it really simple. In terms of, we're working with a customer now, and that's a fairly significant customer, and they said they wanted to run a pen test on the system we're using, because obviously it's going to hold data that is belonging in effect to them. And I said, yeah, I just felt totally confident. I said, go for it. I don't have any problem you trying to break the system, because if you break the system, then clearly it's not fit for purpose, But I'm pretty confident there's going to be no problem at all with that. In terms of the selling of us, I think that's been a real revelation, this, because we're able to set up sample courses, and we're able to give potential customers the experience before they start. They can see what they're going to buy, and my sales team think on Christmas actually, which is quite good, so they might be able to buy me a drink on a Friday night after they've done a few more sales, I hope. That's the plan anyway. But it's a really good way of really involving the employer right from the beginning. They know what they're going to get on the tin, and that's what we're really wanting to achieve here as well, in terms of using the platform. I've got one up. Yeah, sorry.
Can I just ask you on that point, actually, what's the feedback been from employers? Is this something that they see as a benefit? Are you managing to reduce the amount of time that apprentices are spending in your training centres?
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things, and Joe mentioned that in his piece, was that you got to think outside the box now in terms of the way you deliver it. The guided learning hours can take many forms. It doesn't have to be all, for example, classroom-based training, and this platform definitely allows us to give a combination of the two, really, and we can have then links to webinars like we're doing right now. We've got the calendar system, which is really simple to use, so we just feed in webinars as and when we want them, or want to stage them. We can have, there's quite a cool tool in its learning called an LTI. For a system of this maturity, I'd expect it to have had a tool like this anyway, which is called an LTI integration tool, so you can link through to other third-party providers that are providing specific courses. But the point is that the link is here, so the user, the learner or the mentor doesn't have to go anywhere else. They just go here, and bang, it's been set up for them. Administratively, this is very important as well. Administratively, and I've been the main administrator of this site so far, and yeah. I mean, okay, I'm a bit lucky because I've got a bit of background with working with CMS systems and various like that, but it actually is really easy, and I'd be able to show someone that demonstrate that you don't have to know much to get up and running on the system. And yeah, there is restrictions. Like any system, you've got to accept that there are things you might want to do that you can't, for example, but when you hear the rationale, I've probably made it sound so perfect that you wonder what's wrong, But no, to give an example, they have the profile. You'll see you've got a sort of dark purple banner at the top there. There's only 2 or 3 different templates you can choose to have that. We've just gone with that one because it's simple and clean. But maybe that would have been nice to have that. But there was reasons behind why they've chosen that, to keep it keep it a little bit simple, and I quite like that actually. So I work within the limits, but to be frank, the limits are the benefits far outweigh any limits that the system has for what we need it to do.
That was a design decision grant that we've taken from our UX experts at It's Learning of looking for a consistent look and feel on the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I can understand that rationale, and I don't really have a problem with it. You know, it's at the end of the day, it's as long as the experience is a nice one, you can, you know. In fact, I've got a bedroom at home that I've been told by my good wife to repaint the colour, but I haven't got round to it yet. But it's still working. It's still a bedroom, so you know.
Can I ask you what impact you see this having at Just IT? Because you've been using it for the last 12 months.
Yeah, massively. I'll tell you the difference. The quality of what we can deliver is great, because you're obviously extending the learning beyond the classroom, and that's what it's all about. So, you know, typically for an apprenticeship, we'll have them in for an induction day. Well, part of the induction process now is they have a session on the system. They get them up and running, and we can then do a lot of have already a lot set up, a lot of pre-learning ready for them. So you've got the learning integrated with the assessment as well. So again, it's the one-stop shop. So that's brilliant. You can see here on the left-hand side, the navigation panel. I've set up a sort of learner platform, template, which we'll be using for delivering the standards, and we've got the coaching matrix, which is effectively what the business coach will be using to make sure that what learning's going on is meeting, and that the learner is meeting the standards, and we can do a fairly simple gap analysis to be able to make sure that they're covering all the bases and getting their levels of technical competence and knowledge up. And what's so great about that is that it's all visible to the various stakeholders that need to see it. So whether it be the learner, whether it be the mentor, whether it be the employer, whether it be the IV, whether it be the external, whoever can view it nice and easily. And that's a good thing, I think, because then it means that we can make sure that there's nothing missed too early on, and it can be customized for that learner in terms of what learning they need to do, in terms of making sure that they are ready to do their endpoint assessment. And every learner, it allows you to focus on their learning, actually, which is a nice thing, rather than for the individual learning, as opposed to having the sort of classroom-based one. The diary is a big deal, certainly with the assessing body we're working with. So the learner will be completing a diary, and that diary is a really important tool, because the learner is very much engaged in the process, and it's going to become very transparent if they haven't done their job, really, and kept the diary. The diary is all about, you know, how have they're taking control of the wheels of the car, really. I do liken it a bit to getting your driver's license. You pass your theory test with the knowledge, and then you start to learn to drive, which is the practical, the technical competencies. You know, as they're doing the various jobs and gaining those competencies, they can record that, and they're feeling more in control of it. And when the coach, i.e. the driver tutor and the learner both feel they're ready to sit the test, they'll sit the endpoint test. So in many ways, if you think like that, it's a really simple way of thinking about it and working it through.
Fantastic. Thanks, Graham. Thanks for your time. Pass it over back to me. That would be great.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Grant. So, It's Learning is a cloud-based platform. We're actually the largest cloud-based learning platform supplier in Europe and in the UK. We've got a team of experts, like Grant was talking about beforehand. So we've got account managers, trainers, support teams to get you up and running with this. We realise that it can be quite daunting, and I think quite a few providers like Grant and Just IT have downloaded Moodle and had troubles with that. We're here to help. So I'm booking meetings with providers who are interested in discussing this further and looking at your individual strategy around this and how we can help with you. So we'll be sending out an email after this webinar. Anybody who's interested in speaking to us further about this can do. We have just published a white paper which Joe wrote, all around the apprenticeship levy and some of the stuff that he talked about earlier, some of the benefits of using ITS Learning in conjunction with your apprenticeship levy. So there my contact details are on here now. So there's my phone number and my email. This is a look at a new version of ITS Learning which is releasing in the next couple of weeks. Looks pretty familiar to our customers already, but it's been a bit more streamlined. We've got a picture here of, or a screenshot of the news stream which is coming, which is very familiar, has a very much of a look and feel to Twitter or Facebook, and news feeds into the platform in chronological order. Thanks for our speakers, Joe and Grant. Our final speaker is Bob Harrison. Bob has worked with AELP, the Association of Employment and Learning Providers, on the future of digital technology and work-based learning, and spoke at the Digital Leadership Conference. He also spoke at the AELP annual conference in June 2016. He has also been advising JISC on the development of their offer to support the delivery of 3 million apprenticeships. Bob was a leading member of FELTAG and is now a member of the Ministerial Educational Technology Action Group chaired by Professor Stephen Heppel. He has recently been invited to join BIS, FE and Skills Area-Based Review Advisory Group, trying to reshape the FE landscape towards a more digital future. Bob has had extensive experience of education as a teacher, lecturer, senior manager, principal and governor. He has worked with ed teachers and senior leaders in developing leadership skills for the National College of Teaching. Bob was made an honorary life member of CGLI for services to vocational education following 12 years as chief examiner and fellow of the RSA. He is a writer, presenter and researcher on mobile learning, digital technologies and next generation learning. As one of the leading members of FELTAG, Bob will share his vast experience on the use of digital technology for the delivery of teaching, learning and assessment. He is very active on Twitter and can be followed at Bob Harrison SET. That's Bob Harrison SET. So Bob, some providers in the training provider sector might not be familiar with the FELTAG acronym. Can you explain its origins?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. I'm sorry I can't be at the webinar in person, so to speak, because I'm on holiday. But I'm grateful to you to give this shot. Actually, it's an interesting acronym because it stands for Further Education Learning Technologies Action Group, and it came out of a ministerial action group that was set up by Matthew Hancock way back in about 2012, because the FE and skills sector, in my view, had been slipping, and that includes work-based learning providers as well as FE colleges, had slipped further, and sixth form colleges as well, had slipped further and further behind in terms of its use of technology. And the real stimulus, Martin, was the last Association of Colleges survey in 2012 illustrated that despite the hundreds of millions of pounds that had been spent by Vector and then by ELSIS on this particular agenda, less than 30% of FE providers, and I think that was the Association of Colleges, obviously colleges, but less than 30% of FE providers were using technology effectively, and therefore it was damaging the overall policy aims of the learning and skills sector. So Hancock then was the Minister for FE and Skills. He invited me down and he set up a group, and he said, well, what shall we do? I said, well, you know, it's not about money, it's about culture change, it's about behaviour, it's about leadership and vision, it's about workforce skills. So, because he said there was no money, and I said, well, we need to set up an advisory group, and he said, no, I don't like advisory groups, I like action groups. So FELTAG stands for Further Education Learning Technology Action Group. But I think the intention was it should embrace the whole of the learning and skills sector, which, you know, brings us to why we're doing this webinar and why you'll be down at the AELP conference, and why I'll be speaking there, giving a very brief keynote about the digital future for learning and skills.
Okay, that's interesting, Bob. So FelTag's now almost 3 years old. So can you describe some of the delivery changes that have happened to the sector in the result of FelTag?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to say is FelTag, we worked on it for about 6 months. There was about 30 people, professors and industry people, and a lot of people who already work in the sector, including AELP and the work-based learning people. They were represented on it, and they came up with these recommendations. But the important thing, Martin, is I think that FelTag, it's not a report. It's not been seen as a report. In fact, we never published it in hard copy, but for exactly that, we wanted to give that message. You had to log on to get it, and if you wanted, you could download it. But most people, it was on screen. So, in some respects, whilst it made 35 recommendations, and the minister agreed with all 35, it took him a few months to get that published before he got reshuffled. It's more about a cultural movement than it is about a report where you can tick off, all right, that recommendation's done, that's right. So the whole idea behind it was it was not about pumping money in or pumping technology in. It was about identifying the barriers that were stopping teachers, trainers, educators, assessors using technology in a more effective way. And very quickly, the quick summary is it identified 6 key themes that if we nudge those themes or remove some of the barriers, then things could move forward and we could innovate more. And quickly, just the 6 themes are, first of all, does the sector have sufficient leadership and vision? Are the leaders of our organisations, the principals, the governors, the directors of our training providers, do they have sufficient knowledge of what's coming on the horizon in terms of digital technology, artificial intelligence, adaptive learning, virtual augmented reality, all those things that you and I know are on the horizon? Is there enough leadership and vision in the sector? And I think that the simple answer to that question then was no. If I'm honest, at this moment in time, as it moved forward, yes, a bit. The second area was, is there sufficient infrastructure? In other words, have we got, big enough broadband into our FE providers and our work-based learning and apprenticeship providers? Have we got sufficiently resilient Wi-Fi within the organisation? Do we have sufficient reach? Do we have the up-to-date technology, like the stuff that we're using now, to be able to support learning wherever learning might be? And I think the answer then was, no, we don't. I think the answer now is still no, we don't. The third area, theme, was, do we tap into the use of the learner's own knowledge and devices? Are we using learners? I mean, because most of our younger and older learners, I mean, my mum was 86 when she died, and she spent the last year of her life using a tablet in her bedroom. That's how she lived her life, through a tablet and a Wi-Fi, which she never knew she had. So do we really utilise the power that young and older people and our learners have in their pockets and their bags and their rucksacks? I'm not so sure we do. The fourth area was, what's the system for funding and regulation? In other words, do Ofsted appreciate what online and blended learning and how learning anytime, anywhere could be like? Does the funding methodology really reward innovation? And of course, I think most people will say no, because they're still stuck in a paradigm of thinking learning only takes place when you get 15 people sat in a room with a teacher at a certain time and you can tick a register and everything like that. And of course, that's plainly not the case. The fourth area, tell me if I'm on to 4 now, yeah. The fourth area was, do we engage enough with, I think the fifth area, do we engage enough with employers? Do we tap into the employers? And I think in the work-based learning area, the answer to that is we certainly need to get better at that. And particularly, are we tapping into the new and emerging employers, the SMEs that are using digital technology? And the final theme, if you like, is, do we have the right workforce skills? Do we have teachers, tutors, assessors, trainers? Do we have those who can support learning, not just in a face-to-face way, but in whatever way the technology can help and support learning? So I think those are the themes. I think they're as applicable to, I know they're as applicable to work-based learning as they are, and apprenticeships as they are to, FE colleges and so on. That's what FELTAG was about. How much progress have we made? Well, if I was to put my Ofsted hat on, I would say requires improvement. I think there have been some good progress in some of the areas, the workforce development, for example. Workforce development, the UFI Trust have got a blended learning program, which is free for all teachers, trainers, and AELP have been supporting it. And then we've got 30,000 learner registrations out to, it's called the Essentials of Blended Learning. And so in some respects, there has been some progress in things like workforce development. In terms of infrastructure, leadership and vision and the others, no, needs a lot more effort.
Yeah, I've just signed up for that blended learning course myself, actually, and I hope to start that in early July, Bob.
Good.
So where does FELTAG go from here? Are you due to meet again?
No, it was disbanded after it was a task and finish group. So it was set up. We worked for 6 months, all for free. No, the government didn't pay for it. We made the recommendations for free. It was set up, and then the important thing was the minister was very keen that the ownership of it, the implementation, was taken over by the sector. Now, I think this brings us really neatly on to, I think, where we're going in this conversation is, has the sector really embraced it? Well, I think the evidence that I've got, and as you know, I spend a lot of time going out speaking to colleges and running workshops and doing sessions with governors, and I'm a chair of governors myself, so I get out, I spent most of my working life in FE. I think in terms of progress, there are some FE providers that have really embraced the spirit of FELTAG and will thrive and will continue. Not only, they won't just survive the area-based review process, they will thrive and lead us into the next generation of learning and the FE and skills position. But it's very patchy. Now, I think if you were to ask me, so your question was, what about it? Well, the work carries on. It is a cultural movement. The themes are there, and all the issues to be addressed are being addressed. Some in some areas faster than others. But the key question, Martin, is can the FE and skills sector adapt in an agile way and catch up with and be as fast as the way that technology is evolving and developing in an agile way? And I know you've seen my presentations where I talk about my grandchildren and my 10-year-old granddaughter's use of a mobile phone. And the question is whether the pedagogy, our teaching practice, our assessment practice, has that caught up with the technology that's available? And I think the stark answer to that is probably not. So now, when it comes to work-based learning, go on, let's finish off with that. What was the next point you're going to make? Because I think it links into this, doesn't it?
Well, it is really, yeah. And I think you said it's patchy in FE. Have you got experience of how this is, or how FELTAG's been embraced with work-based learning providers?
I have, and I've just completed a bit of work for JISC, who are developing a package of support for apprenticeship providers. So any apprenticeship providers who are listening to this or watching this, work-based learning providers, you need to go and have a look at the JISC site, www.jisc.ac.uk, because they've got a package of support available for apprenticeship and work-based learning providers. I was invited to speak to the AELP digital expo last year, and there's about 200 people there. And I'd probably say less than 10% of them were, one, aware of the FELTAG recommendations, and even less were doing anything about it. And there were all sorts of issues why including their lack of knowledge. Well, in fact, all the FELTAG themes were equally applicable to the work-based learning providers as they were to colleges, but it seemed to me the work-based learning providers, some of whom, most of whom, were even further behind and were starting from a point that was even more behind than some of the FE providers. And there were all sorts of reasons for that: lack of investment, lack of vision and leadership, lack of knowledge and understanding, lack of workforce skills, all the contributory factors. So I think there's an enormous challenge, and it's interesting, the apprenticeship trailblazers that are coming out. I know from my own experience, there's a lot of really innovative work going on in the apprenticeship field in the digital technology area. So lots of SMEs getting digital apprentices, for the emerging digital technology industries. But to be honest, you would expect that, wouldn't you? It's their industry, so you'd expect them. The bigger challenge, I think, is in those industries where there hasn't been that innovation, and as yet they have yet to see the true potential and opportunities that digital technology presents. There are some fantastic innovations. I mean, I have to say, hairdressing and beauty therapy, they tend to be very creative, and they tend to get on with things using YouTube and all sorts of different ways. I mean, there is some really powerful stuff going on, but I have to say, I think it's very patchy.
Yeah, and that's our experience and of the market too as well. So there seems to be a lot of focus on blended learning. Can you explain the differences that this makes for learners and for the provider?
Yeah, I think the term blended is a good term. But let me just take a step back because I think, and just do a quick history lesson as to why we've ended up where we've ended up. If you think about where our FE and skill system came from, it really came out of the turn of the century and after the Industrial Revolution. So the design principles, if you think about it, the people who designed the learning and training and skills system, and the funding methodology, and the delivery methodology, and the pedagogy that goes with it, are fundamentally based in a mechanistic, factory-based. The key industries at the turn of the century, shipbuilding, agriculture, textiles, steel, coal, those heavy manufacturing, heavy industries. And therefore the mindset and the paradigm in which we designed the learning processes was very much steeped in that culture. Now, fast forward 100 years, Internet comes along, etc. Moore's law, we get to where we get to now, me and you doing what we're doing now using technology. And my view is, and my judgment is, because of all sorts of reasons, then the design principles that were fit for design at the turn of the century are now no longer fit for purpose.
Yeah.
And therefore, the idea that learning takes place in a building with a group of people, usually in between 12 and 15 or 20 if you're lucky, with a teacher, with an interactive whiteboard, all sitting facing the same direction, all going in between 9 and 10:30, then you have a break for coffee, in buildings that, if I'm brutally honest with you, are now no longer fit for purpose. And you've heard me talk about my Rochdale experience. And I think what we've got is a system that is currently predicated on design principles that are no longer fit for purpose. And therefore the assets, the multi-billion pounds of assets, are trapped in the wrong resource. They're trapped in land, buildings, 7-story high columns, big atriums. And if I'm honest with you, I think that's not good value for taxpayers' money. And those assets need to be realised, sell off land and buildings, and need to be reinvested in digital infrastructure, and most importantly, the skills of the workforce to be able to take us forward.
Okay, great. So moving on to the apprenticeships and the new apprenticeship frameworks, do you think providers are ready to deliver these new frameworks?
I've got limited experience I know about the frameworks, I know about the trailblazers and everything like that. If I'm brutally honest, the answer is no. I think that they might be equipping themselves to deliver them in that old delivery mechanism. Have they got the right vision? Have they got the right infrastructure? Have they got the right workforce skills to deliver them in a way that will make the best use of digital technology? No, I don't think they have. And I think there's an enormous amount of work and investment that's needed. And let's just explode one myth before we go any further, because you and I have been in this situation before when people start talking about using computer learning and digital technology. Let's be very, very clear. This is not a cheap option. This is not a case of saying technology will replace teachers. This is, you know, any teacher that could be replaced by a computer should be replaced by a computer, because teaching essentially is a human interaction. It can take place face to face. It can, as we are doing now, interact using technology. But the idea that you can invest in technology for learning and therefore get rid of teachers is just a myth. And the idea that we can invest in technology for teachers and save costs is just a myth. What's not a myth is that if we invest in technology, if we invest in infrastructure, if we invest in the teacher's skills, ultimately that will lead to efficiencies, but the efficiencies come from reaching more learners, supporting them more effectively, ensuring they stay on the programs, and helps them progress better. So we mustn't confuse investment in digital technology leads to cost cutting, instead of investment in digital technology and workforce skills leads to efficiencies. They're not necessarily the same thing. And it's an absolute myth. If there are any employers out there, any work-based learning providers, any FE colleges thinking this is the cheap option, let's stick all our kids on computers, let's give them all tablets, and let's put all the content online, you are fundamentally mistaken. This will take investment, it will take culture change, it will take courageous leadership, it will take different sort of workforce skills, and that's going to have to take place over a 3 to 5 year period. And that's why FELTAG was not a report, it's a cultural movement.
That leads on nicely to the last question then, really. So what changes do you expect to see in the delivery of training and assessment in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, 3 to 5 is a relatively short horizon. What I would say to you is, well, it depends. I think one of my most famous retweeted tweets, and if anybody doesn't follow me on Twitter, they're more than welcome, it's Bob Harrison set, is this one, and I think it captures it nicely. Those FE providers, and I'm going to say work-based learning providers and apprenticeship providers, who embrace and embed the spirit of FELTAG will not only survive, but they will thrive. And those that don't, won't. So I think, you know, if we, you know, fast forward, my grandchildren, 5 grandchildren, leave school in between 2027 and 2032. Now, just think about the progress that you and I have made, or we've all made, in the use of our own personal use of technology, online banking, online shopping, online, you know, deliveries from this, that, and the other, Amazon. Do I need to go on? You know, you think about how much technology's moved on in 3 years. Fast forward to the mid-2030s when my grandkids leave school. Will they want to be an apprentice? Will they want to go to a work-based learning provider? Will they want to go and go to an FE college? My suggestion is, and my guess is, they will be leaving schools that have got no pens, no pencils, leaving schools, not primary school, leaving school, no pens, no paper, no hard copy books, no printers, no interactive whiteboards. They'll have libraries that are unrecognizable. They will have books, but they'll be in electronic format. They will be used to gesture-based and screen-based technology. They'll be used to voice-to-text, text-to-voice recognition software. They will be used to augmented and virtual reality. They will be used to wearable technology. Everything will be cloud-based. You know, that's the world that my grandchildren will emerge into the workforce or the workplace or the FE and skills system. the challenge to our listeners now and our viewers and on your webinar and at the AELP conference I was speaking at is the future is in their minds, but their future is in the work-based learning providers and the apprenticeship providers and the FE colleges' hands. In my kids' minds, but your hands. So the question is, what do they need? What do you need to do to make sure that what you offer will be fit for purpose to make it attractive to my grandchildren when they leave school and when they're considering the career options?
So thanks for your time. Hope you found it useful, and we will be in touch with an email afterwards. Thank you very much.